Hola, buenos días. En esta lección vamos a hablar sobre los pronombres del objeto indirecto. Today we're going to be talking about indirect object pronouns. I'm going to try to keep this video as brief as I can. I try to keep all these in under 15 minutes, and I give you an opportunity at the end to practice and take what you learn also to your super science practice. So let's go ahead and look at the lección, indirect object pronouns. So what is an indirect object pronoun? You may recall having learned direct object pronouns. If you took Spanish recently, you probably learned it at the end of your last unit. If it's been a while, you might not remember, but we'll just do a quick refresher. A direct object pronoun is the thing or the person that's directly receiving action of the verb. Por ejemplo, if I say, I throw the telephone. If I throw this phone, what's being thrown is el teléfono, right? El teléfono es el objeto directo. That would be my direct object. That's what's directly receiving the action of the verb, the throwing, right? Yo lanzo el teléfono, okay? If I want to replace that with a direct object pronoun and just say I throw it, I would just say lo lanzo. So you may recall the direct object pronouns, lo, la, los, y las. I always say they directly relate to the noun that they're replacing because they have to agree with gender and number. So el teléfono becomes lo. Okay. If I throw my bottle, we'll call this a bottle for now. Mi botella, la lanzo, la botella. Okay. Yo lanzo la botella. So I would say la lanzo. Kind of a mouthful, tongue twister. La lanzo. I throw it. Okay. So those are your direct objects. They're directly receiving the action of the verb. Now, if I were to throw mi teléfono to someone else or at someone else, whatever, maybe I want them to catch it. Either way, I'm throwing it. They are indirectly receiving the action of the verb. This is directly receiving it. El teléfono, lo lanzo, I throw it. But if I throw it to someone, then they are indirectly receiving that action. So they're the indirect object. So if I throw it to my daughter, yo lanzo mi teléfono a mi hija. Okay. Yo le lanzo mi teléfono a mi hija. Okay. In this case, mi hija is who the teléfono is being thrown to. So that's the indirect object. It's indirectly receiving the action of the verb. So it's almost always going to be translated as to whom or for whom. So when you're doing something for someone or to someone, you use an indirect object pronoun. Okay, so as you can see here, the third person are le y les. En este ejemplo, Roberto le presta 100 pesos a Luisa. So in este caso, Roberto is the subject, okay? What is he doing? Presta, he's lending. What is he lending? 100 pesos, that's your objeto directo, right? And to whom is he lending these pesos? A Luisa. So when we want to replace her with the indirect object pronoun, we say le. Roberto le presta 100 pesos a Luisa. Now, in Espanol, as we're going to see in a little bit later slides, you can actually use both. They typically will use both the indirect object pronoun and the indirect object in the sentence. Can't do that with a direct object. So I can't say Roberto presta 100 pesos. Well, I can say Roberto presta 100 pesos, but I can't say Roberto los presta 100 pesos, and that los be referring to the 100 pesos. I can say Roberto los presta a Luis. He sends them to Luisa. But I can't use the direct object and that direct object pronoun in one sentence together. But I can with the indirect. So it sounds redundant, but it's okay. Roberto le presta 100 pesos a Luisa. The le is just meaning to her in this case. Okay. A Luisa. All right, so here are our forms. Las formas singulares son me, te, le. So if I'm doing something for me or or to me, something's done to me or for me, it is me. So ella me presta 100 pesos. She lends me 100 pesos, okay? Te presto una botella. You know, do I lend you a bottle, or do you want me to lend you a bottle? Okay, so this is when something's done to you or for you. You use te. Le is if you are doing something to him or to her. Like I said, le presta a Luisa, lending to Luisa, or le presta or le lanzo a mi hija. I throw it, I throw to my daughter. Or to you formal, a usted. So if I were to say, le presto $100 a usted, I lend $100 to you. Okay. Las formas plurales son nos, os, les. Nos meaning if something is done to us or for us. Okay. And os, of course, for vosotros. We don't use that a lot. Only in España, en situaciones informales, no? So os, you can be familiar with that, but I'm not going to utilize that as much. And then les, if you're doing something to them, or for ustedes. If I say, les enseño sobre los pronombres del objeto indirecto, right? I teach you all, right? Les enseño a ustedes, okay? El tópico. I teach you all this topic. All right, so using the indirect object pronouns, like I said, there's kind of redundancy here because you use le and you use the indirect object. So I can use the pronoun and the object. So ella le vende la ropa a Elena. She sells the clothing to Elena, to her, le. Les prestamos el dinero a Inés y a Alex. We lend the money to Inés y a Alex, to them, okay? I'm referring to them here. Oops. Perdón. Okay, so in este caso, I use les to meaning to them, but I also clarify with a Inés y a Alex. Okay. Also, you can use it without the actual indirect object if we already know who it is. If we've already referred to that person. That's the point of a pronoun, right? To avoid that redundancy. So, Ana le presta la falda a Elena. Anna lends the skirt to Elena. So, to her. Pardon. So, she lends the skirt to her. A ella, right? Le. But then I can later say, excuse me. Anna lends the skirt to Elena. Le presta la falda a Elena. To her. También le presta unos jeans. She also lends some jeans to who? To her. To Elena. Le. Right? The le is still referring to Elena. They're also almost always placed in front of they're going to be placed in front of the conjugated verb. They can be placed on the end of certain types of verbs, but not the conjugated verb. So they are going to be placed before the conjugated verb and not separated by a subject pronoun or no or anything. They're always going to be right in front of it. So you wouldn't separate the pronoun from the verb there. So Martin me compra un regalo. What does Martin do? Martin buys a gift for me, or is buying me a gift. Eva no me escribe cartas. What is Eva not doing? Eva doesn't write letters to me or for me. No me escribe cartas. So notice that the syntax is a little different than in English, where we would say she doesn't do the action to me, for me. And you can in Spanish say a mí, a ti, a nosotros, a él, a ella, to him, for, para él, for him. We can say it that way, but you're typically going to use the indirect object pronouns in this way before the verb. This is much more natural and much more common. All right, so when the conjugated verb is followed by an infinitive verb or progressive, such as like I'm going to do something, or I want to do such and such for him or for her, or we are doing something using the ando or yendo. So if we're using the infinitive or the progressive form, then we can place that object pronoun at the end of our infinitive or present participle form. So, por ejemplo, él no quiere pagarte. He doesn't want to pay you. Okay, él no quiere pagarte. Because pagar es infinitivo, I can put it on the end there. I can also say, él no te quiere pagar. I can still put it in front of the conjugated verb. So if you just want to memorize it that way, that it's always in front of the conjugated verb, you definitely can do that. But there's nothing wrong or incorrect grammatically about saying, él no quiere pagarte. Okay, putting it on the end. Ella está escribiéndole una postal a ella. Él está escribiéndole una postal a ella. He is writing a postcard to her. He is writing to her a postcard, right, to her. Sounds like there's a lot of redundancy, pero en español no es. Él le está escribiendo una postal a ella. Él le está escribiendo una postal a ella. So he is writing a postcard to her. And it's still correct. Le está escribiendo or está escribiéndole. Los dos son sinónimos. Él no quiere pagarte or él no te quiere pagar. Los dos son correctos. Okay, because the indirect object pronouns le and les can have different meanings, you're typically going to clarify to whom or for whom that pronoun is referring to. So if you haven't stated it already and you're not already sure of who that pronoun is referring to, just like with él and ella, it's the same as with any other third person forms that we utilize of the pronouns. You can put that actual noun in there to clarify. Por ejemplo, unclarified statements would look something like this. Yo le compro un abrigo. If I just walked up to you and said, yo le compro un abrigo, you'd be like, ¿a quién? ¿Para quién? Who are you buying it for? Right? I buy an overcoat for somebody. Are you saying a mí? And are you using usted with me? Or are you saying a él or a ella? We just don't know because I haven't clarified to whom. If I had already mentioned that person, then we would know. But in this case, just alone, we wouldn't know. Ella le describe un libro. Right? Same thing. I don't know to whom she's describing it to. To who is le? Who's the le referring to? So when we clarify it, we say, yo le compro un abrigo a usted, or yo le compro un abrigo a él, or yo le compro un abrigo a ella. So to whomever we're referring to, we would clarify that at the end with the a, el sustantivo, right? A usted, a él, a ella. Ella le describe un libro, and you're like, ¿a quién? A Juan. Okay? So we clarify it by putting that noun after the a at the end of the sentence. Otros ejemplos. Él les vende unos sombreros. He sells them some sombreros. Well, who does he sell sombreros to? Les vende unos sombreros a ustedes. He sells them to you all. Él les vende unos sombreros a ellos. He sells them to them. Again, who's them? A mis amigos. Okay. If you don't know, you always clarify with who it's referring to, whether it is using the actual proper nouns or more specific nouns or using the pronouns. Our last example, ellos les hablan muy claro. Okay. They speak very clearly to them or for them, to them. Ellos les hablan muy claro a los clientes. Okay, that's who they're speaking to, los clientes, right? The irregular verbs dar, to give, and decir are very, very often used with indirect object pronouns. The reason being, you are almost always giving something to someone or for someone. So we're going to very commonly see dar used with the indirect object pronoun because more often than not, well, they're almost always going to be used with a direct object as well, because usually when you give, you're giving something, and you're usually giving it to someone. So keep that in mind. If I'm just saying she gives a lot of gifts, then we don't have an indirect object. But if I say she gives, a birthday gift to so-and-so, then that so-and-so is el objeto indirecto. So remembering that that's going to be often used with an indirect object pronoun, as well as decir. Decir, when you tell something, you often tell something to someone. So you can say she tells a lot of stories, okay? We wouldn't even use decir really for that. She tells the truth a lot, maybe, but more often than not, you're going to be saying, oh, she told her this, or they told my mom such and such. So it's very often that we're going to be using an indirect object there, which we're going to need an indirect object pronoun with it. Okay, so ejemplos. Me dan una fiesta cada año. They throw a party for me every year, right? Te digo la verdad. I tell the truth to you. Te digo. Voy a darles consejos. I'm going to give advice to her. Darle. Voy a darle consejos. No les digo mentiras. I don't tell them lies. I don't tell my parents lies. Okay? Ejemplos. All right, so here's your practice. Go ahead and pause the video work through the questions, and then unpause. And here are your correct answers. If you have any questions,